There is a fundamental principle in democracy that there can be no taxation without representation. Now what this means is that the state or the government should not be entitled to compulsorily make people pay revenue to them unless people have the right of representation within the government. Now if one uses this principle in relation to local government, as you know, you pay assessment towards local government, and in some cases quite substantial, then fundamentally the concept of elected local government is something very close to the principle of no taxation without representation, and is essential part of a growing democracy. If one takes a sample of 200 over countries in the world, some 180 have local government elections. So I think from a philosophical, from a perspective in terms of a modern democracy, I think the position that there must be local government elections is very clear. Now, on top of that, taken together with the fact that the people want it, I think there should be no reason why it should be delayed any further. After all, it was the position in Malaysia until the confrontation period where it was suspended. And in fact, after the confrontation period, the government actually did pass an act of parliament called the Local Government Elections Act and stood by for local government elections, but they never implemented that act. So that certainly shows that the situation in Malaysia was always local government elections. It was only suspended for a period of time, but it should be brought back, especially, I would say, in areas where there is city areas where there's a huge urban population. It seems essential that that level of governance from the election point of view is essential. Why do I say that? Is because the people should be able to pick who they want to represent for their particular area in local government, and if that person is not performing well, then the people will choose whether that person should continue or that person should be changed. Now, for instance, in my case, I'm appointed by the state to sit on Majlis Bandaraya Petaling Jaya, but I'm more than willing, in fact I feel happy if the people actually choose rather than I sit there. They may not like my face, they may not like what I have to say. It's up to them who they want to pick to get the job done. So I think fundamentally this is the position. Now what's happening in the Pakatan states of Selangor as well as Penang, I think the governments or the parties then had made election promises in March 8 that they will restore back local government elections, and now it's 2 years time, and a lot of their voters are saying, hey, what's going on? It's been a long time. So they're starting a process or embarking on a process where they're saying they're trying to restore back local government elections, and that has resulted in them writing to the Election Commission, who has just turned them down to say they don't have the legal power to call these elections. Now fundamentally the Election Commission is correct in its legal perspective. Okay, the Election Commission under the present laws, and in particular section 15 of the Local Government Act 1976, 15.1, has abolished local government elections, and that is passed under the Local Government Act 1976, which is passed under the under the Federal Constitution, in particular Article 76.4 of the Federal Constitution. That's when local government acts were abolished. So presently the Election Commission is right in saying, based on the law as is, we have no power to call those local government elections. However, the state can still proceed, but they have to do a number of things which I hope will be considered as part of the necessary steps if they are interested in holding local government elections. Now one of those steps is, of course, the Local Government Act 1976 allows the state government to exempt any section of the Local Government Act from operation within that state. So that means there is a section that says you can exclude what sections you feel are not in your interest to do so. So if the state government invokes section 1 subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1976, it can remove section 15, which is the section abolishing local government elections. It can also remove section 10. Section 10 is the appointment of councillors. Currently all councillors are appointed under section 10 of the Local Government Act, but if you're going to have elections, you'd want to remove section 10 and section 15. And then at the State Assembly, the state government can pass a piece of legislation dealing with the process of elections of local government, and that could be it's not an easy process because you've got to find out who can vote. Is it going to be ratepayers? Is it going to be residents? Is it going to be people based on previous electoral lists? What are the electoral boundaries? So this is it's a very detailed process, and they'll have to pass that legislation, and then only after that would they write in to the Election Commission and say, look, now I've got the law and I've removed the obstacle, so can you please go ahead and formally call the local government elections. Now there's some talk that you must refer under section 95A to the National Council of Local Government, but in my opinion I don't think that is correct. Of course, if you want to have a new law in relation to local government, you've got to seek their advice under the Constitution, but you don't have to follow that advice. They just advise you on the format of the law. In terms of having to subscribe to policy by the National Council of Local Government, in my view, any policy by the National Council of Local Government cannot override specific legal rights in legislation. So that means the Local Government Act 1976 has allowed you to exempt the cancellation of local government elections. That cannot be overridden by a non-legislative body. So in my opinion, there is a legal method which can be pursued. But obviously, any attempt to proceed by way of a legal process is going to take some time. I do not think that this can be done under a year. I certainly don't think, because the difficulties of the actual implementation process can be quite prolonged, let alone there may be legal challenges, because I think the federal government presently has a policy. It feels local government elections are not necessary, and the current system is good enough, and the state governments have, some states have a different view of this matter. Certainly I do agree that local government elections will not solve local government problems, because local government problems are far more deep than merely just changing the so-called board of directors. I think it will help in the sense that it will make the people fully accountable to the people. That means if they don't perform, they're out. So in that sense, it will give a bit more empowerment to the people in trying to get things done. But it not necessarily will solve the problems dealing with the lack of efficiency, so on and so forth, corruption within local governments, and those other aspects. Now, there is another shortcut method. I call it a shortcut method. It's a simple method. So if the political will is there, it can be implemented tomorrow. Now this simple method is, the state government says that, yes, I have the power under section 10 of the Local Government Act to pick the councillors, to pick the Dato Banda or the YDP. But when I make that decision, I'm only going to do so on the basis of getting the referendum or allowing the people to vote at an informal election process. Informal means I will set up a system whereby you can recommend or nominate a particular person to be in local government, and you've got to work out the logistics of this. You may want to divide up the area into zones. You may want to have qualifications. Not anybody can be there. I think the Local Government Act requires certain qualifications. The person must have achieved distinction in any profession, commerce or industry, or is capable of representing the interests of their communities, or has a wide range of knowledge in local government. So maybe these are the criteria. You nominate the candidates. It goes before a nomination committee, and the nomination committee is very transparent. Maybe it has people from Transparency International, it has resident representatives, it has state government representatives. You go through the nominations. If they qualify to the strict criteria, then they are up for election, so to speak, and then people will cast their ballots, and at the end of the day, the state government promises to abide by the results. That means the state government says, I will appoint them, but I'm appointing them based on what you recommend. That is perfectly can be done. There's no legal impediment to doing that. And in essence, you will then have candidates being selected more or less on the basis of the will of the people. Okay, that means the people are actually having a say while you're waiting for the legal reform to take place. So certainly this method will work. And I don't think it is a massive step towards going towards the full elections, which will take a little bit of time. On another note, the state government need not necessarily have local government elections for every council in the state. They can actually select which councils they want to as a on a trial basis. So for instance, if they want it for big cities, Subang Jaya, Shah Alam, Petaling Jaya, they can actually do that without having to go ahead and do it for the whole state. So that may be prudent. It may be prudent. It depends on the state government. It depends on what the people want, and it depends on what is the objective in going through this process. But certainly the Act allows the state government to exempt from any part of the Act, from any part of the state. So certainly the power is there.